Ministry Consultants was started 5 years ago, really with the heart to equip and empower small church leaders. There's a ton of incredible resources out there, a lot of organizations doing great things. But Tiger, our founder, noticed that there was a gap when it came to small churches, that a lot of resources were priced out of small church budgets, were constructed in a way that didn't work for a small church staff, how much time they had to give. And so YMC was born out of a desire to really meet that need, because the work you all do matters. And so we're here for you. So we do free coaching, trainings like this, cohorts. We got some really fun things cooking for this year, and we're excited to get those out to you in the coming months. Before I introduce Stephanie, though, I want to pop in the chat just our upcoming webinars. All registrations are open. You can sign up for those, and then you'll get the communication. If you used a code to attend today, you can use that same code for any of these, and you'll also get it for free. So take advantage of that. If you register, you'll get the recording later. So you really got nothing to lose by signing up for those. I am going to hand it over to Stephanie now. Stephanie is a small church expert. She is on staff with Ministry Architects. She's been in the church world for a long time, and I'm so grateful that she's willing to share her wisdom with us today on how to maximize small church ministry. That those churches are doing incredible work. Your churches, my church, and so this discussion today is an exciting one. So Stephanie is in Texas, where there is a storm raging. So we all have our fingers crossed that the Wi-Fi holds. But if not, we will figure that out and keep you posted. But Stephanie, go ahead and take it away.
Well, it's just always so nice to see other small church youth and children's people, because a lot of times when you're in a small church, you're not only the youth director, you're the children's director, you're the everything director. And so I'm really grateful to have you on. And Tiger, I don't know if you remember me, but I've been in your classes before. I was younger, so much younger then.
So was I.
Yes, weren't we all? And so it's just good to be here with you all. It just in case you're wondering how I relate to small churches, my mom and I yesterday were just talking about what our plans for Easter Sunday would be, because my mom's older, and it's just you kind of have to plan things out and how she's going to feel. And she said, Steffi, maybe it'll be like last year. We'll have maybe we'll have even like 45 people in church. So that's a big Sunday for her little small country church. And so I get it. I really get it. I am in Houston area. And how I got connected into small church ministry was through a guy named Rick Lawrence. Now, Tiger will remember Rick Lawrence, but the rest of you may or may not know who Rick is. Rick used to be the editor for a magazine called Group. And, it's a youth workers magazine, and it's not printed anymore. But Rick had said to me one time, well, Stephanie, you're serving at a small church, because I had asked him, hey, what resources are out there for small church youth ministry? I go to these conferences and I get these books, and they feel like everything's geared towards at least 50 students. How do I translate that? And he says, well, there's not really much written out there. Why don't you write it? And so that's kind of how I got started in it. That was like in 2010, something like that. And so, anywho, here we are. Today, we're going to just kind of go through a few things. They may be things it may be stuff you've always wondered about. It may be, it may be stuff that you hadn't heard before. But really what my hope is that it gives you something to think about. It lets you know that you're not alone in being a small church youth or children's worker, and that there's really way more of us than sometimes we feel like there is. So let's And if you have questions, feel free to jump in and ask, but we're going to leave about 15 minutes at the end for question asking as well. So I may not be paying as much attention to the chat since I'm teaching. Usually I'm the one being the disruptor in the chat room. I know you're shocked by that, but today I won't be. So anyway, I wanted just to kind of make sure we were all on the same page with knowing what's happening in small church world today. So this next slide, I just want to share some statistics with you. And I do it because I want smaller church people to realize and fully understand that being in a smaller church is not the out of the norm, it is the norm. The average size church membership in America is 60 people, and that's post COVID. Prior to COVID, right at 2019, the start of 2020, average church membership was in the mid 70s, but membership has dropped. We've seen this decline across the trends. In my work with ministry architects, we'd kind of landed that there felt like there was about a 30% decrease in pre-COVID numbers to after COVID numbers. So, but this figure was put out by Pew Research, and so there's other backing for this. The average size church membership post-COVID is 60. So again, I share that because I want small church people to know that we don't need to compare ourselves to the big box church or to the big church down the street. We are actually really what most Americans seem to be gravitating towards. Small church still has a lot of benefit to people. It's only 1% of churches in America, and that figure is probably less now, that have 1,000 or more members. And so every church isn't bigger than us. We are kind of the norm. The average size youth group in America, or the number of youth, and when I say youth, I mean 6th through 12th grade, average size group or average size number of teenagers in a church is 6. See? Not everybody's 50 students. Interesting thing is there's still a large belief in who God is, or who people may define it differently, but only 15% of Americans are in their house of worship in any given week or on any given Sunday. Well, let's not say just Sunday, whatever their day of worship would normally be. And then active is now considered attending church once every 5 weeks. That brings its other challenges. Any questions or wonderings about those statistics? Thoughts or pushback? It's really just an excuse for me to sip my coffee. All right, so let's look at a small church youth ministry's biggest advantages. At least to me, this is how I see it. Let's see if you might feel the same way. I think, so the last youth groups I served in a church staff setting, the second to the last, I had 212 kids. And then the last church I served, I had 9 students. So that was quite the difference. But I was going through the ordination process, and, I was at a small church. I think one of the biggest advantages is that in serving in a small church, you can know every single kid. You can know every student's name. In fact, I dare smaller churches and the older folks, like my mom's church, to get to know those names. You know, I'll say to that, I realize now that my mom's moved in, I sure use her for a lot of examples. Good thing she's over in her little apartment and can't hear me. But she'll say things like, Well, I'm not really good with names. I can't remember all those names. Yet this is the woman that can tell you the television schedule from 6 a.m. to 12 a.m. probably, and she knows what show's on. She's still trying to get used to this whole streaming thing, but she remembers the television schedule. I think the challenge is for us, let's provide more ways in our smaller church to let people know each kid's name. Let's put the expectation on the adults to learn those names. Because you know what, 6, 10 names, we can do that. And students that are called by name have a much higher rate of staying connected because somebody's looking for them. Somebody knows when they're missing. I think another advantage, if we've only got 6 students or we've got 10 students or whatever, we can go visit. There's enough time for us to go to the ball game or go to the choir concert or go see the whatever. And in fact, I think that you could make some of those, like spring's coming up and the big annual spring musical or choir concert. Why not make those a church event? Make it a dinner and a show. Coordinate the dinner at church or go out to Bob Evans, wherever church people like to go, whatever. Um, a Cracker Barrel, and then take them to the concert, arrange the transportation. Your older folks in the church are going to love that. First of all, they're going to love having plans. Second of all, they're going to love being able to see the kids in action. And wouldn't it say something to community if 10 people or 15 people from the church showed up and they just happened to be wearing shirts that said the church's name? And folks are going to go, wow, look at all those people here from such and such church to see that one student. I think when you have a smaller youth group, it's just so much easier to coordinate details. You only got to buy tickets for 8 people, right? You only have to worry about keeping track of 8 people. Anybody that's been in ministry for more than a minute, well, I cannot confirm or deny everybody, but I can not confirm or deny me either. That sometimes when you have a big youth group, it's kind of easy to lose 1 or 2 here and there. I may or may not have left a kid back in Ron John's surf shop in Daytona Beach, Florida, one time, but we found him eventually by the time we got to Wendy's. It's just easier when you have a small church and a small group. It's an advantage. It's easier to make course changes. You can all of a sudden, because I mean you can decide, instead of going to the putt golf today, we're going to go to the state park instead. You can call or text all of your student list and let everybody know about the change. That's hard to do with the big group. And then last but not least, I think smaller youth groups, I just think they're less fussy. They're less entitled. They're more relational. They're glad to see whatever others are there. Any questions or thoughts or anything?
I like this, the way you've articulated that. I think there's some real positives to the ways you can build relationships in a smaller context.
Yeah. And actually, Tiger, the cool thing is, in a smaller church, by getting to know students, you're checking off several other boxes too in a small church setting. You're kind of establishing that intergenerationalness that so many churches want, but it's harder to do when there's, several hundred. But in a small church, that intergenerational feeling is a lot of times what keeps families coming to that small church. So let's look at some of the struggles that I see a small church might have. It's true, there's just a shallower resource pond, shallower fishing pond. There's not as many people to kind of throw your net out too to see if you can get volunteers or skill sets. This is where I think partnering in some ways in a collaborative ministry, I'm seeing anyway, more and more of this, where churches are sharing youth leadership, but 2 or 3 or 4 churches are partnering together. That deepens that resource pond. It also, I think it's a struggle with a small church. You've got an iffier critical mass. If you've got 6 kids and 3 of them are related, so there's the family birthday party, it takes out 3 kids, and then the other 3 come to youth group, and they're the 3 awkward ones that were waiting for the 3 family kids to come, and it can be iffier. My advice, because I'll have people say, well, if we have iffy critical mass, how do you plan for that? Well, don't plan anything that needs every single person there. Plan something that's going to work for 2 kids, 1 kid, or work for 10 kids. And the other thing that I tell small churches, especially if you're trying to build and you were hoping for 8 to come and 2 come, don't cancel. Keep going, keep doing it. And don't use any language that says, well, I don't know where the other 6 are. This would be better if we had all 8 here. Just keep using positive language, enjoy the 2 that are there, because that'll send a message that the youth group is, that you can trust it, that you can know it's going to happen, that it's not going to be inconsistent. It is hard to teach sometimes with varied age levels. You got a Sunday school class that's got a 6th grader and 2 8th grade girls in it, and that one senior in high school who's only there because the father's the pastor and they have to go. It's tricky. It's true. And you have to do more, you have to do to make it age level. Sometimes you have to do even breakouts within that 2 or 3 students just to make it more age level appropriate. Open up together, have some mentoring, maybe one-on-one going on, and then close together. If you're a church that's looking to staff in a smaller church, that can be tough because not most all smaller churches, if they do even hire someone or can hire someone, can't hire full time. So you're trying to hire for 10 hours a week or 15 hours a week. Yet the church still wants the guitar playing person that can walk on water. So it's tougher to do that. And by the way, you can be successful in youth ministry even if you don't play the guitar. I don't know about the walking on water part. Last time I tried it, I sank. And then the one last thing, especially when you're in youth leadership, but you're in a small church, it's tough to fly under the radar. It's easier just to make the one family mad. You know what I'm saying? Every church has some strong traditions of families. There's still 8 generations attending the church. And you really want to know who the people are, because if you're a newer to youth ministry and still a little awkward, you can make the wrong family mad. And I don't know, try not to do that because it just doesn't end well. So anyway, that's my 2 cents on that. Well, I got like about a quarter more cents I could talk about that one family, but they could be listening, so they know who they are. Anywho, okay, so what are some of the things you can do, like with smaller critical mass? You may be wondering, then what exactly is a good critical mass in a youth group setting? People smarter than me have said that they sense, and students have said that critical mass feels like it begins around 4 students. 3 students could be okay, but around 4 students, then you've got a couple of adults there. It feels, once there's enough to fill a car, I think it starts to feel like it's a group. That doesn't mean if you've got 2 or 3 students, you can't do successful things. That doesn't mean that by any means. It just kind of lets us know that if we do have less than 4 or 5, but we still want to value those 2 or 3, um, we might have to find some different ways to do that. And again, that goes back to intergenerational. The more intergenerational ministry is within each church, the less students feel like they're being deprived of numbers. They feel like they're a member of a larger sense of family. Does that make sense? And so when that multi-generational feeling culture is really honored in a church, a child is just going to make multiple friends. And all the studies, there are so many studies that show how each student needs adults that know them and know their name. And that could be an 88-year-old and still be just as effective in ministering to a youth, to building in that sense of deep discipleship and wanting to know more and wanting to stay connected. So in a smaller setting, having multiple generations there kind of answers that critical mass question. So say you'd love to take the youth group Christmas caroling, but it's hard to do with 2 students. Well, you invite the children, or you invite other people to go with you, or you invite other groups. That could feel a little more awkward, I think, especially in Christmas caroling, because you know how students just you got to have the right kids that like to go up to the doors and sing. But anywho, when you do a lot of multi-generational, intentional ministry, it plants deeper roots in the kids. And then again, like I've kind of said before, they'll want to keep coming around. I would say in a smaller church setting, be more cognizant of building the youth calendar around church events, because that'll give you critical mass. Now, I think one of my favorite activities in a church I haven't been to a bad one yet, is the annual church talent show. Maybe I shouldn't use the word talent because it's not always talent that one sees. A lot of times you just see great variety. I'll never forget Miss Amy. She was 1,004,000 years old, but she'd get up there with her dog and they'd sing Elvis tunes. And it was the worst, funniest howling you've ever heard. So, have a youth table at the church talent show. Put some, maybe you go to the annual church turkey potluck, and then afterwards you take just the students to go get Dairy Queen Thanksgiving blizzards. I mean, you can put little bookends, but if you build around a church event, it feels like there's more people. Don't forget that older people have the time that maybe you don't. And so doing an intentional ministry between youth and older folks in your church, again, kind of checks off a bunch of boxes. And then go ahead and have the youth be involved in maybe some of the other community oriented stuff. If you do a VBS, if you do an Easter egg hunt, if you do a fall festival or trunk or treat, don't make the students just labor at those, free labor, or don't make them just be helpers, because I think students hate that phrase. Oh, their students are going to be the helpers at VBS. helpers are babies in their mind. Students want to have real connection and real purpose. And so give them real connection and real purpose and real to-dos at the VBS, the Easter egg hunt. And they'll consider that still part of an active youth ministry. Mentoring programs are a real plus. No matter if you're a small church or a large church, mentoring programs are amazing, but they do also help solve a critical mass problem in smaller churches. And then last but not least, and this is directly stolen from my boss, Mark DeVries, but make sure that for your youth ministry, and this is whether you're small or large, make sure you have cheerleaders for the youth ministry in every generation and intentionally plant good news. Make sure you've got somebody in the women's group that you send good news about what's happening in the youth ministry, or somebody in the choir, or somebody in that Sunday school class that's been meeting for 50 years. You want to feed them info about the youth and what they're doing because other folks want to know and they want to celebrate. And the more people that have a positive story, the more they might share that positive story about what's happening at your church with others. Does that make sense, folks? And so I want to tell you why this
Can
is
I
important.
ask a
Yeah.
question real fast?
Yes,
So
would you?
I'm in Massachusetts in Community Covenant Church. We're in a not a we have become a small church.
And if you were a medium church that's become a small church, that's a hard journey.
It's interesting to see, and we're in a place where we shouldn't, like, the community, we don't look like a typical small church community. Like, we're in a pretty built up area, so people wouldn't look at us and think small until you like come. But I was wondering about when you said multi-generational, so you found that youth don't always mind going down and partnering with kids, as long as sometimes we can go down and sometimes you can go up. Is that's what I'm asking?
Yeah, I think churches that have always been small have for the most part, in those churches that have always been small, children's and youth ministry rarely run separate, to be honest with you. Just to make Sunday school happen, they've got to have all 8 from 3 years old to 18 come together. And it's a real eye-rolling experience for teenagers, but the same people often, they have the same children, spreading across the age levels. And so it's a welcome norm. In your case, it might not be as welcome a norm in the beginning if you do children's youth stuff together, because there's going to be a lot of folks saying, I remember remember when we used to have 40 kids here in the youth group. There's no record of that, but you hear that. And so again, I think, Becca, if you're going to do more things with children up to you or youth down to children, I think it's even more important that it be less helper, more leadership, because then they're going to stay invested. Plus, students that do real leadership down in the children's ministry, those children love those students.
They do.
They just think like they're the greatest hero. And that actually will help keep numbers, maybe even grow numbers, because you've got children that saw student leadership directly to them. Then when they're students, it's just an expectation because that's all they've known. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that's helpful. Thank you.
Oh, that's great. I want to encourage you. I see these 2 kids. This is 2 of our grandkids. I think I forgot to mention My husband and I have 7 kids. They're all grown and gone. And we got a bunch of grandkids. These are 2 grandkids. They're older now, but the summer they they came to live with us for part of a school year in a summer, just because mom and dad were really struggling and it had been very hard. And both kids had seen things they shouldn't see. Nobody should see mommy pull a gun on daddy. Um, so the kids came with us for a while, and my mom took them to their VBS, her VBS at her little church. And like, I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be interesting because this is a church that attendance is normally 15 to 18 on a Sunday. How good is this VBS going to be? Well, the church actually did what an expert might say did all the things wrong. No registration forms, no medical releases. Damien's a full-blown type 1 diabetic, no food restrictions asked, none of that stuff. When they walked into church for chapel each morning, they had to cross their hands and walk in with the reverence of anyway, they could have done things differently, except for the fact my kids came running in the door every day, happy and joyful, because those folks, those little old folks at that church who didn't know all the new ways and new expectations of VBS, what they did know is they loved on those kids. They sat by them, they talked with them, they sent food home with it, none of which Damien could ever eat, but they sent food home. Our kids felt loved, they knew loved, and that was from that small, tiny church who maybe wasn't an expert at everything, but they sure knew how to love with the love of Christ. That's one of the fondest memories that we all have of that summer. They were so excited having been to VBS that year at that small little country church. So there we go, folks. I'd love to have more conversation. And actually, you know what I'll do? How about, Rebecca, I send this PowerPoint to you. I sent you a bunch of other little templates and documents this morning, but how about if I send the PowerPoint as well? And you're welcome to send that along with whatever, with the recording or anything.
Yeah, we'll get that sent out when we
Great.
you get a follow-up email after this with the recording link. And I encourage you to share it with anybody in your circle that can benefit from it. We don't want to gatekeep any of this information. So get it to the people that can use it. One of my favorite things about these times is you get one-on-one time with incredible ministry experts. And so yeah, if you have questions for Stephanie, if you have things that you want her insight on, take advantage of this time.
Yeah, because I actually ended like 5 minutes early. Whoever knew a speaker that ended early? So anyway, feel free to ask questions. Hey, Seth, you got a question?
I do. It's about
Yay.
student leadership. I'm wondering if you have ideas for ways that students, youth can lead, say maybe beyond children's ministry. I ask because for us, we have like kind of limited opportunity for that. But I want to give them the chance to lead in ways that are kind of age appropriate and more than like holding an offering basket or a communion tray.
I am with you on that. I am so with you. The token gestures for integration that churches make. Well, I'd like to say I'm happy at least they're trying, but I'm generally not happy because I don't think they're really. What ministries do you have in your church? what would be like, is there an older ministry? Is there a mission ministry?
I'm just, one thing my kids have really liked, I've been roped into having to do coffee hour during Sunday school time. And they love to help make coffee hour. And I can't have them make coffee, but I'm like, can you carry these napkins to the table? I make the coffee. I'm like, oh my gosh, yes. And I had a 5th grader like laying out a cheese plate where I'm like, it's fine, it's fine. But he was so into it. So I don't know if you have like a coffee, like they could do coffee hour once a month or whatever.
The simple way I've tried to think about any student leadership and intergenerational engagement is to just start by asking a real simple question. And that is, could a student do this? If you get people to start asking that question, okay, we do coffee. Could a student do that? And then if you say yes immediately, then find a spot. If yes, but they would need coaching, well, then you find someone to help. If you yes, but they need to
Agreed.
know, have this 1-hour training session. But we just sometimes have teenagers over in a separate section and they only can do the most basic. I think we just, if we ask that question, it opens up. And then Seth, you know your context, but what are the opportunities? And then ask, could a student do that? Yes,
Great.
in cooperation with someone else. Then we figure out how to do that. But it's helped me be less abstract and more just specific to, I look around my church and keep asking, could a student do that? Could a student help with that? Could a student be trained to do that? Soundboard, Sunday morning, up front, anything. What could they do?
And I
You
think
know-
sorry,
Oh,
just
go
to
ahead,
jump
Rebecca.
off of that. Sometimes that takes a little bit of vision on the front end to help the other adults in your church catch that students can be doing this. Because people have this aversion to teenagers, like they're gonna catch the plague from them or something. But the more you talk about how great they are, the more you talk about how capable they are, the more you talk about how much these relationships matter, to have a student on the tech team running PowerPoint next to so-and-so and building those relationships. That's where people start to ease into this. Oh, maybe a student could do this because you've normalized it and you've normalized what they're capable of.
You know, I love that. Can a student do this? One of the things that I find in working with a lot of small churches with ministry architects, and most of them are mainline, is that there actually is a hunger with the older folks in the church to have intentional connectedness to the student. They just don't know how to do it. You know, boomers or the generation that's the few that are left and older than boomers, they're afraid they're going to say the dumb thing. They're afraid they're going to say, and I should know, I'm a, smack in the middle boomer myself. They just need to be equipped, and but one thing every church has is 1 or 2 older Sunday school classes. What would it look like if students prepared maybe just 1 or 2 lessons, worked together and did the research, and then made arrangements to come and teach one Sunday in the Sunday school class the lesson that they've worked on and kind of prepared, and maybe still did it in their youthish sort of way, but they practiced it and they went and shared it with this old Sunday school class. I'm telling you, they'd love it. All parties would love it. It would have its laughter, it would have its moments of awkwardness, but you'd find those older folks would be way more pliable than we might think they are. What do you think, Tiger?
Yeah, no, I think that's, again, it's asking the question, and then we'd have to have some training, some preparation. You
Right.
don't send them in there unguarded, but yeah, that could be very well received, because a lot of those older people are grandparents, and they, if your kids are doing something, they're picturing, oh my gosh, that'd be so cool if my grandson
Right.
or my granddaughter were able to do that. And so you touch on them at a little bit at the heart level, not at the quality of teaching level, which is hopefully good, but it's going to touch another piece. We used to do a deal, people disagree with Youth Sunday, but one way to expose in our smaller church was we took Mother's Day as the Youth Sunday. And it was to both be visible, but we also, non-spiritual, after all the spiritual reasons, we always got in a circle and put our hands in the middle, and our motto was make mom cry. Because we wanted every mom to be just, bawling it, because their kids are well behaved, they're saying nice things, they bring a rose out and kiss their mom on the cheek, you're just all kinds of good stuff. But it was designed to touch people at the heart level. And I think that teaching with a grandparents would work that way. It's a great idea. I'm going to suggest it in my church.
Mother's Day is the third highest attended Sunday in a church in a year. You know what the third lowest attended Sunday is?
Father's Day.
Exactly.
Huh.
What else, friends? This has been so much fun hanging out with you.
Yeah.
Ask anything.
I know you were talking about getting the youth involved with the older generation in the church. Well, we like to get the youth involved with the kids, and we're very small. We might have 6 or 7 kids and 6, maybe about that or less of youth, really. And I was doing children's before I moved up to youth, and started the youth ministry going. And so regardless of what I was doing with the kids during children's church, somebody'd end up making paper airplanes when they're going everywhere. So I grabbed one of our youth and I said, and I found a book in Aldi's, and it was all about making paper airplanes. So I said, Chase, I need you to come in with the kids and teach them how to make a really good paper airplane. So he took the book home. A couple Sundays later, we were out in the yard and the kids had made paper airplanes, and paper airplanes were going everywhere. And it was so cool. And now we've got a young lady that's in youth, and we always had where the pastor came down and he would have moments with the children during church. Well, we've got a new pastor and she's just not comfortable doing that yet. She wants to, but she's never done that before. So we've kind of picked that up. And now we have one of our kids, she goes, I want to do that. And she's graduating this year. She's going to be a teacher. So she's down there doing the children's moments in front of the whole church with the kids. And it's just kind of magical, really. So, I mean, not only the older ones, but the younger ones need the youth too for different reasons,
Thank you for that. Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah.
What else, my friends? This is so much fun. I was just looking in the chat room at who is coming up next. Kara Powell. Gee whiz, I'm so glad I'm not following her because she's fabuloso. Holy cow, I'm so glad I didn't see that till now. If you haven't heard Kara Powell, she's just like this. She may be the smartest woman alive. Seriously. She might just be the smartest. Yeah, she might be the smartest and very authentic. So what else, friends?
Hi, this is Carla,
Hi, Carla.
and I'm from Iowa, ELCA Lutheran Church. And I just wanted to share that so we do all the Week services. And so this Sunday for Palm Sunday, all of the confirmation students, so middle school students, are reading the whole Palm reading, the two books of whatever gospel we're in right now. And then we just came up with the idea of, for Good Friday, we're going to have the younger kids read the crucifixion scene from a story Bible.
Mm,
And we're going to record them after Palm Sunday so that they don't get nervous
mhm.
doing it in front of, the congregation. And so we've just been trying to find those little ways of getting them involved. So it should be fun.
Oh, Carla, the thought of a young child reading probably from Luke you're going to use, that just kills me. I just think that's super powerful.
Yeah. And it just to have that other voice,
Yes.
and a children's voice read,
Oh, yeah.
I think it's going to be, well, I hope it'll be powerful. So,
I just it wouldn't matter if they were perfect in the reading. In fact, the imperfections are what would make it beautiful.
exactly. Yep.
So
And that
I
is
have-
bringing me back to my own, Christmas pageants in a smaller church, and I can still remember some of those lines. So I think that'll be especially impactful for the kids too.
Well, and speaking of Christmas pageants, because nobody has time to do I don't have time because I'm part-time to do the whole Christmas pageant and that sort of thing. So what we did, we had a brown bag Christmas pageant. And so all the costumes were in a bag, and we had multiple Marys and multiple Josephs and stuff. And so it was intergenerational. Our
Love
four
it.
our four Marys and our four Josephs were all over 60 years old. And then we also had, the younger kids be the angels and shepherds, and it was fabulous. It was fabulous.
So cute. Becca, did you have a question?
I do. It's just with the wide span of Sunday school kids, has anyone found any curriculums that work really well to adapt to a wide group? My biggest struggle is half the kids can't read yet, and half the kids are like, in 7th grade. So I was just wondering if anyone's found any that are good to adapt and spread.
There's so many good curriculums out there. By the way, there's no great curriculums. It's the teachers and leaders that make good curriculum great. So investing in the training of the teachers and leaders is more valuable than investing more money in the curriculum, I think. The curriculum itself would depend on your setting, but the curriculum type I'd be looking for large group, small group, large group, open and large, because then you could probably use the older version if there's videos or activities or songs or whatever. And then the small group would be where you'd break out, even if it's just 2 kids in this age range and 2 in this age range and 2 in, you'd have 3 mentors that would do the Bible exploration, and that might be where you have to have teachers guides, at least one, so that you could borrow from the different age levels you need, and then still do a closing large group, because then you're building back on that critical mass. I had a good I had a really good experience with Cokesbury's Deep Blue. They're not publishing it anymore, but I had a great experience with their one. I think they are publishing their one room curriculum because it had, at least for children, it had the preschool pre-K options and then the elementary options, which made it easier to do large, small, large, because then in the small group times there were more age appropriate ways to divide even a small group up.
Yeah.
That's just me. What do you guys think?
It's a great question and a significant one. I don't have any answers for that one.
Seth put in here, godly play is helpful for intergenerational space. And you're right, it does depend on the teachers being trained.
Yep.
I'm seeing a lot of godly play happening lately.
I don't want to be a downer, but one of my questions about small church ministry is not in every context, but in some contexts, or maybe a higher percentage, the church at large context is a bit of either we used to be this and now we're not. So there's that sense of disappointment that where we are is a sign of we're in decline. And so sometimes in smaller churches, there's not a whole lot of optimistic visioning for the future. And so what is a person who's working with the next generation, however small or large that is, how does that impact them when the general kind of DNA of the church is a bit of a, we got to keep the old people happy, but we aren't really thinking optimistic about the future? How does that affect the ones working with children and youth in that context? I mean, again, I don't want to be the downer, but I see this a lot. I hear that a lot of the discouragement that seeps down into, it's not an energy to, in other words, they don't see the youth and children ministry as a sign of our church, our future of our church, because our church has been doing this for the last 30 years and we're just waiting for it to keep going. What do we do with that, Stephanie? You got any?
You know, oh gosh, that is such a real question. In your work, you see it a lot. In ministry architects' work, we see it a lot. It's what keeps us busy.
Yeah.
Lots of smaller churches, medium churches asking the questions. We're getting smaller and smaller. And then the next, they'll say we're getting smaller and smaller. And then the first question is, how do we get more families?
Mhm.
But maybe this is the cynical side of me. The real question most small churches are asking when they say, how do we get more families? The real question they're asking is, how do we get more church members so we can get more givers?
Mhm.
Because they're aging. And so, Tiger, you're not alone in bringing it down, because I just got all and I think it's a tough road for youth and children's workers in that church setting. Because you're either one that by nature of being in youth and children's ministry, it seems like we always do want to grow. We want new, we want fresh, we want to get bigger, we want to reach more, yet we're in a setting that doesn't seem to want that. So we have a choice. We either can just keep fighting the battle, I think. It's one of the reasons why planting cheerleaders in the different generations is important, because it could help start changing their tone. And when churches say we need more families, we need more parents, one of the things you'll have to keep reminding them is that the church is going to have to go outside the doors for that to happen. The expectation of the Gen Z parents to bring their children in, or the younger millennial parents to bring their teenagers in, is coming inside the door first isn't really gonna happen much.
And
But
not
yeah,
all churches are small, but if you're a church in a smaller town, uh, under what, 4 or 5,000 people, if you're in a rural small town area, there are not a lot of those families moving into your community. So you don't
right.
have this natural pool that you can now recruit or find or hope
Sure.
that they'll find your church. And that creates a sense of discouragement. We aren't seeing that in our community, much less in our church. And so part of it is, if you're in a smaller town, someone once mentioned the church should work real hard. They're going to have a local reputation, much more so than in a huge metropolitan area. And we have to work and keep asking the question, what is our reputation?
What is our reputation?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And can we make sure that that's a positive, community oriented, integrated view that people have, this church is engaged, and so it's a way for us to be practical with that sense of, what is our reputation? So I'm just curious, and how many people are in smaller churches that are also in smaller or rural communities? That's part of it. It changes the context a little bit, doesn't it, Stephanie, as you've watched it?
Yeah, I think that's true. And in some cases, being in the smaller, more rural makes some of the things easier and some of the things harder.
Mhm.
Like I mentioned before, and I saw several people nod, we're going to see more and more collaborative youth ministries. And in now I could be wrong, and maybe you see it different. I think the idea of a collaborative youth ministry is easier in a bigger town because everyone's used to having to collaborate, or maybe in their work setting. I think in a small rural town, you'd think collaboration would be easier, but I don't think so, because we're, the Methodists that have always gone to the Methodist church are always going to go to that church, and the Baptists that are 2 blocks down at that church and they're always going to go, and this church, do you know what I'm saying? And even mixing the teenagers in something more than the occasional, let's get together and do a bonfire event is in some ways a tougher sell. Am I wrong on this, or do y'all? It's just tougher. Men and women, youth ministry is harder now. It is just harder. It is not what it was pre-pandemic, but the truth is, pre-pandemic, we were seeing a slide and a decline in church attendance anyway. It was here. The pandemic just exacerbated some things, and it also brought to light the realities. And so in some ways, I kind of like this post pandemic church world we're in, because I think we're taking more realistic looks at who we are and what's really happening. And it's just not gonna be easy. The secret, I'll end with this, that I tell folks in youth ministry is worry about being effective. Don't worry about being efficient. Well, Rebecca, anything else?
Yeah, thank you for your time. Thank you for your
Yeah.
insight. Yeah, it's been such a great conversation, and I hope encouraging for all of you. Please join us in the future webinars. But I also want to encourage you, if you're navigating a tough season in your church, if things are changing, we'd love to get you connected with a ministry coach. We have coaches standing by that are ready to walk with you at no cost to you. That's one of our core values, is that you should be supported in the work that you're doing. And so send me an email. I'll get you connected to one of our coaches, and they're just great people, and I would love to navigate this with you. Thanks for being here. Thanks for your time. And Stephanie, thank you so much for sharing with us
It
today.
was fun. Thanks for letting me come and hang with you. And we didn't lose power. So You know, it's still kind of storming and raining outside, but it was great being here with you all. I really, really enjoyed it. Thanks for asking.